Hi, I'm Eric Kimball. Welcome to part 4 of this little YouTube video series in which I am showing you how I custom framed my Mary Azarian woodcut print collection. In this video, the concluding video of the series, I am going to show you how I cut the mat, mounted the prints, and put them in the frame, finished it all off. But I want to preface this video by telling you a story. It's about this print right here. 20 years ago, I found this print on eBay, and I wanted it for a specific spot in my house, in the kitchen. And it's been framed like this in my kitchen ever since. And I derive great pleasure from seeing this in my kitchen. That's what art's all about. You derive pleasure from seeing it, from having it, from owning it, from it being a part of your life, right? Well, I decided that because I liked this print so much, I wanted it framed right. I wanted a really good job. So I took the print to the best framer around. The people who framed this are a husband and wife, and they have had an art store framing business for decades. And they're the best. Everybody knows they're the best. Long story short, they did a beautiful job. In 20 years, the mat has faded, but the print really has not. The window faces the east, so it gets the morning sun. It's held up well, and the frame, beautiful. Did a great job, but it cost me $300. $300. That's a lot of money for my socioeconomic position in life. As I was about to embark upon this adventure of framing my Mary Azarian prints, like these, I could probably, I figured, buy everything I needed for 6 prints or more for $300 or less. And I kind of did. That was my thinking. I'm going to do it myself. And I've always been a little intimidated about mat cutting and framing and doing it right, but we've got YouTube these days. And I learned everything about this that I'm about to show you now on YouTube. Okay, you got to sort through the videos and find the good ones. And what I'm going to show you in this episode is how I finish the frames off, but I'm not going to go into depth. I'm going to just give you an overview of the steps involved, what I did, give you a little bit of information, what I learned. Then I'm going to have links in the description for YouTube videos that I found that were good, that from people that knew what they were doing, okay? So that's what I'm doing here. The other thing that's important to me that I want to stress here at the beginning is that I'm using acid-free materials. The mat, the backer on the mat, the tape that I used, it's all acid-free. Very important. You've probably seen prints that, 15, 20 years or more down the road, they've got stains on them. They're acid stains. In the past, in my amateur framing work that I've done, I've taken a print and a store-bought frame and a store-bought mat, and I've taped it with masking tape around the edges, and that's not the right way to do it with good art. This is what I consider good art. I paid a good buck for it. I wanted the acid-free components. Now, acid-free components are different than archival components. Archival is even better, but it's off the charts with cost. And I used regular glass. I didn't use the UV blocking glass because it's so expensive. I mean, it is really expensive. So within my budget constraints, I used the acid-free materials that were available so that these prints would be properly framed and cared for in the frame. That's important. I want to stress that here at the beginning. That said, let's get into it. I bought this Logan mat cutter to cut my mat, and I'm entirely satisfied with how it worked. It's the right tool for the job. For demonstrating here, I'm going to cut a 2-inch border all the way around a scrap piece of 4-ply mat board. This is a slip sheet. It's a scrap of mat board, and it needs to go underneath your mat when you make the cuts. You can't see it very well, but on the back of my mat board, I've pencil marked the 2-inch border I want. The pencil marks are needed to show where the indexing mark on the cutter goes for starting and stopping the beveled mat cuts. This is the cutter. You push a lever with your thumb to extend the blade. Right there you can see the indexing mark on the cutter. Cutting the mat is as simple as putting the mat cutter in position on the cutting rail with the indexing mark on the pencil line. Push the lever to lower the blade and make a smooth cut, stopping when the indexing mark meets the next pencil line. If you do that properly on all four sides, your mat will be cut just right. The interior piece will be free. In this example, I didn't do it just right. Almost, but not quite. Here you can see I have my 4-ply acid-free mat cut to size and a piece of 2-ply acid-free backer that I'm going to use to mount my print using a tape hinge. The YouTube link in my description shows how to do this in detail by a professional. It's not hard. I'm going to speed it up here now. Cleaning the glass, especially on the side against the print, is of course very important. I used the recommended ammonia-free glass cleaner shown here and microfiber cloth. The microfiber cloth does not leave any lint. That brush you see is also very useful when it comes to cleaning latent dust particles off the glass or the print. So the clean glass goes into the frame. Followed by the mounted print, followed by backer material. I used a corrugated plastic called Plascolite for the backer. I used Plascolite because it was recommended by an online picture framers discussion group. Cardboard or masonite are not recommended for this because, as I understand it, they off-gas acidic fumes, which is, of course, not good. I'll have more to say about Plascolite shortly. There are a couple ways to secure the backer to the frame. One way is to use little pointed flat pieces of metal called flexi points. My Pushmaster can push in the flexi points. But I decided that I don't like flexi points, and I opted instead to use glazer points, which can be easily pushed into place with a stiff blade putty knife. With the Plascolite back thus secured, I commenced to put a craft paper dust cover on the back of the frame. First, I cut an oversized piece of the paper. Then I applied double-sided 3/8 inch wide ACT tape around the frame perimeter. Next, I placed the frame on the paper just like that. Then I used a utility knife to cut away the excess paper. The paper backer looks much better if it's cut back just a little from the edge of the frame. I used my finger gauge to mark a line, then a straight edge and a knife to cut away the thin strips of paper. I positioned D-rings for my hanging wire at approximately 1/3 of the frame height measured from the top down. I used an awl to make a starter hole for the D-ring screws. I had to reduce the width of the D-rings just a bit with some snips. One screw secures each D-ring. I cut a length of hanging wire a little bit longer than needed. There is a particular knot that professional picture framers use when securing the hanging wire to the D-rings. I have a link in the description to a short video showing how the knot is made. I learned how to do it from that video. It's not hard to learn. Here's that knot one more time. The last thing is to put a couple bumpers on the bottom corners of the frame. They help stabilize the frame when you hang it. I need to interrupt this regularly scheduled video programming to tell you about the Plasco light and why I think I don't like it on a large print like this for a backer. Now, right here, I hope you can see that there's a ripple between the print paper and the mat. I don't think that's right. I've got a little bit of ripple over here too. So I figured that's because this Plasco light, this air-filled corrugated Plasco light, is not really stiff. So when I put it in, it's not putting pressure on the mat, between the mat and the print, okay, like would be best. So I decided that on my last print, which was this one here, which had some, was the same size as that other one, I had some of this 1/8" HDPE plastic. I had some and I decided, well, this is much stiffer. There are even stiffer things like masonite, I think, but you wouldn't want to use masonite because it'll off-gas and it'll be acid and it'll ruin the beautiful print in time. So I decided to try this, and it worked better than the Plasco light. You can see there's no ripple here. It's tight. It solved the problem. And what I may end up doing is taking this apart. If you put it together, you can certainly take it apart and redo it. That's the beauty of learning this skill. And replacing the Plasco light to fix the ripple with something stiffer like a piece of this HDPE. So anyway, that's something that I've learned. This is a learning process for me doing this. It's fun, but in some respects it's a little discouraging when something like that happens. I want it to look as good as it possibly can. So that almost concludes this video and this series. I've showed you my adventure, my learning adventure, framing my Mary Azarian block print collection. And I want to show you one more thing before I conclude here. It's something that I'm going to frame someday, not right away, but someday. I'm going to use the same plain pine frame. I may not distress it, I may just make it plain black, but I want to frame this photograph, this long, old photograph. This is the Bowdoin College class of 1920. Actually, I don't think it's the class, I think it's the whole college. It's all the classes. 1920. And my grandfather, Dr. Herrick C. Kimball, is on this photograph. And he was not a doctor at that time. He was on his way to becoming a doctor. My grandfather was a poor farm boy from Fort Fairfield, Maine, and he was smart, and he made something of himself, and he started with Bowdoin College. So I've had this photograph for a long time, and I've wanted to get it framed, but I haven't wanted to spend $300, or who knows, that was 20 years ago I spent $300 to get something framed. I didn't want to spend a lot of money. Now I have the tools, I have the knowledge, I have the basic frame to make this come together. And the only thing I need to do is figure out how to uncurl it, to get it flattened out. If anybody knows, please put it in the comments. I'd appreciate that very much. So anyway, yeah, thanks a lot for watching, everyone. I'll see you in the next video.